Excited to be here with you today. We're going to talk about living with a narcissist. We can't always leave a narcissistically abusive relationship. Sometimes we have to live with them for a period of time. And maybe you're one of these individuals who are in a relationship with a narcissist that's just not going to change. It's a fact of your life for various reasons. Maybe you lack the financial resources. Maybe you're struggling to have another place to live. Maybe you depend on this person for your livelihood. Maybe there's children with special needs, but the situations can be very complicated. Maybe you don't have extended families and this is really the only person you've got in the world and you're depending on them for a lot. Sometimes we don't have the freedoms to leave. I know for my situation, I felt really dependent on this person. I was in another country where I didn't speak the language. He was fluent, I was not. We were trying to run a business. How was I going to manage a business without this partnership that I was relying on? So it's really easy for us to get into these to look at from the outside to look at toxic relationships and think, well, if it isn't good, if this person's that difficult to live with, then you should just get out. But that actually, and heard Dr. Ramani say this, and it really hit me when she said this. She's doing a narcissistic abuse certification training right now for clinicians and coaches, and she said that when we approach people who are in toxic relationships as if there's always an out, as if it's just simply a matter of deciding not to be in a relationship, that we're coming from a privileged position. It may be feasible in your relationship that you've been able to get out. Maybe you had the resources, you have the family support. Maybe you had a really great job. Maybe you had the kind of the help that you needed around kids. Maybe you knew that you had the financial support, or I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the legal support. But not everybody is in the same position as you and I might be. Many people do not have the same kind of access that you and I have. So we have to live with narcissistic people. So let's talk about how to do that. Or maybe you're somebody who's in a relationship and you're really not ready to leave yet, but you're wondering if maybe you can make it. I know some people get a hold of me who are my age, who are, they're looking at their later 60s and 70s, looking at their senior years, and they're feeling like, really, I'm going to go out on my own at my age when even moving is a physical challenge and I'm going to start over my life. I don't even know how to frankly do that. And I know this past year I had two hip replacements and I have been pretty laid up. I've been doing PT lately, who's really been giving me a lot of release and helping me to get strong and get back to functioning normal. But I remember last year I couldn't imagine moving. I couldn't imagine moving. I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the physical stamina. I just couldn't do it. I physically couldn't do it. I was really very dependent in a lot of physical ways that made me uncomfortable. It was a fact I didn't enjoy. So some of us may find ourselves in this position that we can't get out. But so we're in a relationship with not a good person or person who's puts us down, attacks us, sets us up, sabotages us, sets us up, maybe financially abuses us. We're just in a really tough situation, but we're trying to live with them. So what are some things that we need to do or think about to make this a feasible situation? So that's what I want to really hone in on today. And if you guys are new to me, you're not familiar with me, I know lately I've had some videos that did really well. So some of you may never have been here before with me. I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr-McAvoy. I am a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of counseling practice. I used to have a private practice where I saw individuals, couples, and families. These days, I primarily focus on creating group programs, creating membership support systems. I also like to do a lot of education. Oh, and I realized this came apart again on me. But I love to do education. We just talk about everything related to narcissistic abuse. So I'm super thrilled that you're here, that we're hanging out together today. I always go live on Tuesday afternoons at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time to take your questions, but also to talk about different topics that maybe you aren't hearing anywhere else. I really love to cover the angles that the other people, but from a psychological standpoint, from a practical relational standpoint. So I'm super, super happy that you're here with me and that we're going to be talking about this today. And I'm just to let you know, I've been going through this training with Dr. Ramani. It's online and digital, so it is at my own pace, but I'm super excited about the fact that there's going to be certification coming out. I know there's been some people, I've seen a couple videos sent to me about how there's just no hope for narcissistic abuse survivors, that we are going to perpetually be victims, perpetually be in these toxic relationships, and that we sort of just need to accept that that's a reality. I, I, I disagree. I strongly disagree with that. I was in a 31-year marriage with somebody who is not narcissistic, even though I came out of a home with toxic relationships. Yeah, I fell into another one. Yes, there's a risk I can miss it again because there's so many people who are toxic. But I want to get with those no, naysayers out there. I want to push back, and I want to give you all hope that we can do this differently. Healing is possible. I do agree that it isn't enough to get education. That's what you're doing here. When you come on here and hang out with me and we talk about these topics, knowledge is power, but it's not all the power that you need. There are some other things that are critical in healing. So it's not just enough to know. You also have to learn to do better self-soothing. You have to learn to listen and trust and understand your gut system when it's warning you of danger. You have to find a way to reconcile the confusing memories that you have about that other person. So if you're because cognitive dissonance continues to plague us even after these relationships are over. These relationships, I have to say, are probably some of the most confusing, mind-blowing, difficult ones to overcome possible. So there is enormous amount of work, but I want to encourage you not to get hopeless about it. That it's so important that you're here, that you're learning about it, but that also you do what you can to really focus on your healing, your complete healing, healing for trauma, healing from the betrayal trauma, healing from the deceptions that you've experienced, healing from the intimidation and the erosion of your self-esteem and self-confidence. So I'm super thrilled that we're hanging out together today. I look forward to getting to know you better. So thank you so much. So, what if you are in a narcissistic relationship and you can't get out? This is just going to be a part of your life, or at least for right now. I mean, maybe that's a way to view it. It's that for right now. What can we do? So, here I want to pass on some tiblets, tidbits, and then we're going to also then take your questions for the back half. For those of you who don't know, I often take the first section and just talk and educate, and then we take the back half and take your questions, address your specific issues, whatever is going on. So if you're new here and you want to ask a psychologist a question about abusive relationships or any type of question, actually, be sure to hang around so that we can get to it at the back end. Also, it really helps in these worlds if you share this video, share this live stream with those that you know that really need to be here today. Maybe they're struggling with betrayal trauma. Maybe they're in a relationship and they can't get out. It's the timing's not right. Share them. Let them know that we're talking about that right now. And this could be very, very beneficial to them. Make sure you also like the screen. I, for a long time, was on lives and had no idea that you just tap the screen when you're on TikTok, and that likes. And for TikTok algorithm, like, oh, this is a good live stream. So, and then on Instagram, I'm not for sure quite how you do it. I think there's a different process, but please like this so that we get this out more. I really, really appreciate it. It helps a lot. So, how do you live with somebody who's toxic? Let's talk about that. And I know people love to always come on and ask me questions. And interesting, it's a lot of men today on TikTok who want to join me. And I wonder if it's about that financial abuse videos I've been putting out, because I'm sure making a lot of men mad. Why is it men are mad? I really would like, I mean, why are women not mad? If you look at women's stories, most of the women's stories are all about the awful stuff they've survived. But boy, I'm getting reamed by men right now. They're not popular with them. Which, you know what? I'm just sharing what actually happens. It's not, I'm not calling anybody out. So it's interesting they're taking it personally. But anyway, thank you so much for that gift. I appreciate it. So, how do you survive when you're living with a toxic person? Here's some tips. First of all, I really want you to get good at Jade. Have you ever heard of Jade? Jade is don't justify, don't defend, don't attack, and don't explain. So when you all know how it happens, you bring up an issue, it seems to you like a non-issue. You're bringing up something that's just a normal part of life. You're trying to coordinate what's happening, and next thing you know, this person has blown it up into this big argument. It's circular. It makes no sense. You feeling super confused. You wish you'd never brought it up, and you're feeling completely maligned. Like they're now telling you that you're the worst person in the world, that you always do this. Why are you bringing this up? And that, that you're a hypocrite or two-faced or whatever. It's just going in this insane place. And I know when it happened to me, I really wanted to set the story straight. I felt it was unfair to have all of this spoken about me because I was simply trying to whatever, maybe plan dinner. Maybe I was trying to work out what we're going to do for the weekend, or maybe we're trying to carpool, figure out carpooling for the kids, something simple. And next thing you know, it's off in this tangent about how you think you're better than them, or you think you're all that. So what do you do when that's happening to you? The best thing for you to do, and this is super hard, is learn emotional detachment. Because the reality is, with narcissistic people and other toxic people, they're not going to be the kind of ideal partner we wished for. They're really not. So, part of learning to live with them is learning to let go of your hopes and expectations that you're going to find this incredible companion, this really good friend. And what's really makes it additionally hard for those of you who've never been in a toxic relationship, you would know this, is that we have good periods with this person. We have amazing periods with this person where we think, oh, it's better. It's on better footing. It's going to go well now. And I'm going to, we're seeing eye to eye, and I can relax. And then next thing you know, it doesn't take anything and you're back in the weeds again. That there's this off again and on again nature to these relationships because toxic people are reacting to what's happening in their life. They're extremely dysregulated individuals, emotionally dysregulated. They are very volatile. So it could be something that they say they went out for work and somebody cut them off on the freeway, and that just for the day sent them in a mood that they just felt like life's unfair, everybody's out for themselves, and then they come home and they treat you like you're part of this unfair system. And so you end up with this person that may have left breakfast fantastic and headed off for the day and comes in a totally horrible mood. So you're always like walking on eggshells and testing the wind to see what you're going to get when this person comes around. But learning to accept that you're not ever going to have a consistently available partner who's just confident can really go long ways to helping you grieve and let go of that expectation so you can develop more realistic expectations for this relationship. I know for me personally, that was like a killer because I'm looking for somebody that's my confidant. So for me to come to terms with, I'm living with somebody I'm going to have to always be guarded and careful around and always stay a little emotionally detached and thankful for what I get, but also accept that I'm not going to get a lot is super hard. But that's critical for your well being if you want to survive these relationships, that you have to completely readjust what you think you're going to expect to get out of them. I think the other thing is that you have to develop really good emotional, psychological barriers. I don't want to use the word boundaries because I'm not talking about setting limits. I'm talking about the way in which you guard yourself psychologically, guard yourself emotionally. You have to get to the place where um you know that this person is not a person that you're going to share a lot of vulnerability ability with, that there's certain things that you're just not going to go there with them. Maybe it's maybe your more shameful moments, maybe where you feel embarrassed, maybe it's where you see that you're having failures or you're struggling. You're just going to have to like cut that wall that off and not go there with this individual because they're not going to be a person who has the emotional capacity to hold space for you there. That's what it's called psychologically. When therapists show up for clients and create this incredible safe place so clients can talk about whatever they want to, we call it, we're holding space for you. We're creating a space. So you have to accept the fact that this person's not going to be able to hold space like that for you. Again, it's super hard that you're living with a narcissist and you're loving them and you want all of this with them and you know that you're not going to have it. So that's the other part that's super important, is learning to accept the limitations of this relationship and grieve what it is that you wish it could be, but it won't be. That's super hard. I had to, for me, come to terms with the fact that who I thought I'd married, who I thought I got in a relationship actually never existed. And the best way that I did that was to tell myself that person died. That's really helped me a lot to accept the fact that I may have thought that person existed, maybe briefly in the love bombing they did, but I'm not married and living with that individual. So for me to manage that was super, super helpful just to see it as a death because I already experienced losing a husband. So I knew what it was like to like mentally to go through and disconnect from my wish. So that was super helpful for me to do that too, is just to process the grief. And I think that it is to set really realistic expectations and boundaries going forward. You will know really quickly with this individual where their hot buttons are, what sets them off, not always, but a lot of the time. You will know what is safe to risk, what's not safe to risk. But so go into it's kind of strategic with those realistic expectations so that you can set up as best that you can a kind of a workable arrangement. That's really what it is. You need to find a workable arrangement. It's very hard to do. Like I said, it takes a lot of emotional protection on your part. It takes a lot of emotional confidence. Like you have to like define yourself, figure out who you are, figure out what your strengths are, and then really not accept their feedback as valid input. For me, that's super difficult. I could hardly do it. I mean, so when they like comment about how I'm emailing and the fact that I'm emailing poorly, I'd have to say to myself, you know what, Kerry, you've run a business independently, successfully for over 20 years. You certainly know how to email people. I mean, you've even been called to testify in court and did that well. You know how to email people. You're a good communicator. So I'd have to like work against their criticism, realizing it's hard to realize this in the moment, but it's actually a projection of their insecurity, not an accurate commentary on your strengths and weaknesses. So it takes a lot of emotional processing, of sitting back and analyzing it instead of usually when we go into the relationships, we figure somebody has our back and what they say to us is helpful information because they want the best for us. No, 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 not in these situations. You're in a relationship with somebody who views you as a competitor, who views you as somebody that they have a poor regard for and feel threatened by, and they're going to do what they can in order to make you feel small so they can feel bigger. So you have to consciously go in knowing that every interaction is a loaded situation with that intent but underneath of it. It's super hard. I mean, it's super hard. I know most of us ideally shouldn't be in the you deserve let me back up. You deserve an emotionally available person. I'm feeling teary saying this because this is true for every single one of you here today. You deserve to be in an emotionally available relationship with someone who deeply respects you, who sees your value, who knows that you are worth it, who loves you dearly, who has your back and shows up, who shows you kindness, who lets go of your errors, who holds no grudge against you, who protects you under all circumstances, and who can't wait to be with you. That's what you deserve. Unfortunately, most of us don't get that in most of our relationships. That's a sad truth. I want that as if I could give all of us a Christmas gift right now, I would wish that on all of us. I'd be a fairy godmother and wish that for you. Unfortunately, that's not what we're living with. A lot of us are not living with that at all. So please hold on to the fact that that's who you are. That's what you're worthy of. That's what you're deserving. And that this person, because of their own shortcomings, I'm sorry, I really got worked up, their own shortcomings and deficits and weaknesses, they just cannot do this for you. They just can't. And it isn't about your failures or your weaknesses or your faults or your imperfections or you not being good enough. It has nothing to do with that. That's the bizarre thing. It feels like it because they're so good at making it feel like that. Because here's the other thing. They know how to turn it on and off. I mean, I actually heard Dr. Ramani share a story. This is great. I thought this was a powerful story. She was working with somebody who had a sister who's very powerful in some world, and her sister was her client. The sister of this powerful person was her client. So the sister would be the powerful person would call the sister up and say, "Are you alone?" She'd actually ask her the question. And the client knew that the question was a loaded question because if she was alone, the powerful sister was going to turn it on and just ream her out, just really give it to her a good one. But if she was with other people, she would hold it together and have this really great conversation because she knew in some level she was, not alone. There's no privacy. They know how to make good first impressions. They're going to make sure that when it comes to the world, everybody thinks that you're the luckiest person with a great relationship, which really is isolating to not have that kind of support that we need. So I know that these are the situations that you're facing, is this incredible isolation, living with somebody who really doesn't know what it's like behind closed door, who thinks that you've got super lucky in the lotto of picking partners or picking family members. But that's actually not what you're experiencing at all. So yeah, that's how I'd love to, if you have more questions about it today, that's how you can live with a narcissist. It's not going to be successful. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take enormous amount of hard work on your part. But if you have, I would recommend these things. Here's some things I would definitely recommend that you do. Get good support. Please don't go alone. Get a coach, get a therapist, join my toxic free relationship club, but get support. Don't You need people who can validate you, who can tell you what's true, can help you see through the gaslighting and the deception. That's number 1. Get support. Number 2, really, really learn to work on yourself. And one of the things is that you never have to respond in the moment right away. You can always take the time. Now they'll tell you that you shouldn't. Mine used to always say, you need to bring it up right when it happens. Well, I can't. I'm autistic. I often don't know how I feel about anything right in the moment. It takes me sometimes days to know how I feel about something. You know what you need. Buy the time that you need in order for you to stay healthy, in order for you to cope with whatever you're going on. So find a way for you to regulate yourself, to build your confidence. And here's the other thing: have outside interests. I don't care that they get mad about it, that it pisses them off. If they try to like, take your privacy away, find a way to get the privacy that you need. Maybe you need to put some locks on some doors and lock the door so you can talk to your friends alone when you need to. Or maybe you need to go sit in the car more and take run errands more often. But find a way to buy the privacy, buy the space that you need so that you can take good care of yourself. Make sure you do the things you need to do to take good care of yourself. If this is someone who's interrupting you in the middle of the night, maybe you need to move to a separate bedroom. If this is somebody who's not allowing you to have regular meals, maybe you need to think about what you're going to do to make sure you still get the meals that you need. That happened in my case. He controlled my sleep and he controlled my meals. If this person's running your schedule to where you have no freedoms, maybe you need to think about how you can take the power back where you can to be able to control your schedule. But really think this through. It's not going to be easy. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. They're going to fuss because they sense them losing control. But if you want to sustain this, you want to make this work, or you have to make it work, these are some things that you can really do that will help you better advocate for yourself and better protect yourself. All right, so I'm now going to turn it over to take your questions. I know a lot of you have been talking to me, and some of you have been talking about issues that are very dear and near to your heart, and you're having issues. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. Let's talk about what's happening in your life, especially as we come up to the holidays. And I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm going to start trying to read some questions across the board. I really can't focus when I'm talking about other things. Yeah, somebody talks about the Grayrock method. The Grayrock method is really helpful. I want to make an adjustment to it, though. You need to know the partner that you're with, whether or not it's going to incite anger and rage in them. So if they think that it's coming off as snarky, or for those of you who don't know what Grayrock is, it's answering a provocative question with a bland, flat kind of non-emotional, detached way. It's just a really great way to sort of not get invested. It's a form of the emotional detachment. Is really what it is. So if you're in a situation where they're trying to pull you in and instigate a fight with you, it's always helpful just to sort of sidestep it in some way. But you got to be careful. You have to really watch your emotions on your face. Now, as I said, I'm autistic. If you guys have never noticed, I have to work to show emotions on my face. My face usually is rather bland. I don't really show a hot. In fact, my clients used to love it because they said they could never know what I was thinking, and they assumed I was thinking nothing hurtful. How nice is that? But I have a great poker face. So you don't know what's going on in my head unless I let you know what's going on in my head. But a lot of us don't. A lot of us have micro expressions, and that makes it really vulnerable. So if you're like thinking in your head, "Oh, good grief, there they go again," it's going to bleed out because that's a form of contempt. Oh man, and they don't want to experience your contempt. That's a real fast way to make them irate. I mean, they have a lot of contempt for you, but don't you feel contempt for them? So that's why I really say be careful with gray rock as a technique. You really know how to have to do it well so that you can do it safely. I think a better way to do it is to learn this is the same process. I mean, it probably comes out the same, but it's a different way of thinking about it, is to shift into thinking about being unattached to this person's anger or upsetness. That you aren't invested. I mean, like I said, I've had people really mad at me about the financial abuse videos I've been putting up. So when I read them, I say to myself, this is a person who's feeling attacked or feeling confused or feeling triggered. And then I don't feel triggered or personally attacked by what they're saying. I'm just like, oh, there's a lot of confusion here. Or they're feeling called out. That's why they're so angry. See, it mentally allows me to disengage from it and not personalize what I'm reading so that I feel less like I have to personally respond. And I can be more flat, more mechanical, more direct about whatever it is. It really helps a lot. So whatever it is, you can shift it. You can shift it so that you are emotionally detached so you don't respond. But it's a great way to cope with where they try to like bait you into a argument, which is really, really tough. Um, is autism a reaction to narcissistic abuse? And can autism be confused with CPTSD? Autism is not a reaction to abuse. Autism is a developmental disorder. So it is a permanent condition that affects the way in which the person's brain operates and how it functions and the way that they see the world. So it comes with four areas of often deficits or difficulties. That is, language is a piece of it. For some people, language is not a struggle for me, but it is for one of my sons. He has a language deficit. It can also be neuromuscular coordination problems. You often see them might be clumsy. They might be slow to develop with smooth neuromuscular fine motor skills. I had one son who really struggled to color when he was little. He had struggled to hold the pen and the pencil well. It also includes a sensory stimulation and overload. So certain maybe sounds or feels of things or senses of things can be really, really overwhelming. For me, it's sound. I get really overwhelmed with sound. I also, because so you'll notice if you're ever in my house, it's super quiet. I don't have I can't stand having TV on all the time. It just literally gives me a headache and makes me feel miserable. Yeah, I know for some of my children who all have autism that it may be the way things feel. They may struggle with textures of food. I mean, it just is interesting how you get very emotionally overwhelmed. I'm sorry, very sensory overwhelmed. There's another area I'm trying to think of that's often a problem. There's four big areas, and I mentioned three of them, but I'm sure somebody here probably will remind me of the fourth area. But so it has different kind of deficits. One of the other ones is that you are you struggle with you're very literal. I mean, I'm not abstract thinker. I'm an intuitive thinker. That's different. I tend to be literal though. So if somebody says something to me, I tend to take it as what it is. I don't really see deception very well. There's the problem. Autistic people, as well as ADHD people, those people who have developmental delays in both of those arenas or developmental issues, disorders, that's a better word. Developmental disorders of ADHD or autism tend to be more vulnerable. Because they tend to overshare, so they're better at getting love bomb, and then also they tend not to be aware of the deception, of the duplicity. They tend to be a little more naive. I've heard my entire life how gullible I am, that I'm very gullible. I got into a very dangerous situation, one of my first jobs out of college, where I stepped into where a medical director was doing some insurance fraud. I didn't really fully appreciate what he was doing because again, I said I'm literal. I don't believe people are that like dark or awful. So I noticed that he was running patients out of their full insurance benefits. This is back in the day where people could come in for 6 to 8 weeks to the hospital. So that's a lot of money. I mean, we're talking like maybe close to $100,000 he's making off clients. And he would keep them. He'd find reasons to keep them and run out their benefits so that, say if you came in February and your benefit got run out, if you needed help later in that year, and often people with mental health issues need repeat support. So he basically exhausted their benefit for the entire year. So I had a client that was happening to, and I was trying to help her navigate it better. And he pulled me into the office. And remember, I'm only 21. I graduated college early, so I was young. So I sat across from this very intimidating older man, and who was probably very narcissistic. And he looked at me and he goes, "You're either very gullible or you're very savvy." And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm gullible because I have no idea what you're accusing me of. It wasn't only until later when I analyzed the situation that I realized that he figured was taking him on, and that I was I knew what he was up to, and I didn't. I figured it out after the fact, but I didn't. I knew enough to keep my face plain, and not to tip my hand that I had no idea. I knew that whatever I said would be used against me. But so anyway, but having autism definitely makes you more vulnerable. Can it be confused with CPTSD? I don't know. I don't know. I do know CPTSD can be confused for personality disorders, that's not uncommon. And I also know that most narcissistic abuse victims end up with maybe a mild form of CPTSD, not universally, but I do think that we're more at great risk of that. So, yeah, yeah, Mary, you can both be an abstract and an intuitive thinker. Um, it would be interesting. I'm going to look into that more. What the difference between the two is. I know that I know things without knowing how I know it, but I don't always think abstractly. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. I'll have to like find ways to put those into words. So I'm struggling for that. Please follow me to help me. So what's going on, handmade, that you need people following you to help you? You want to share a little bit more what's going on in your life? Oh, Maureen, I'm so glad that you're here and hanging out with me. You are a godsend. I really, really appreciate that. And Courtney, same to you. I appreciate you too. If you guys are still both here. I have a skill that gets me a lot of attention, but people tend to bully me. Can I give you advice? Absolutely. So what's happening in that situation? I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Do any of my kids passe? What does that mean? All of my kids have autism, and they're all adults, by the way. I don't have any minors. They're in their early 30s to mid 20s is how old my sons are. I have 3 sons. They're very unique. I mean, they all are autistic, so they're very, very unique people. Do all of them pace? Oh, yeah, my oldest paces. Yes, he paces. He paces a lot. He fidgets. He fidgets a lot. He almost looks like he has when he was a kid, I swear. Nobody diagnosed my kids. I didn't find out until my middle son struggled with college and we got him help. And here I am with Pete Walker's. I know Pete Walker's. I actually got to hear him speak when I was in graduate school. Personally, got to hear him in a room. Fascinating guy. But anyway, so I've got to meet really cool people over the years in my education. I've been very, very lucky. I'm thankful for that. But back to autism in kids. So okay, let's back up. 1980s was when autism was added to the DSM-3. So there's a lot, I mean, it's been around, but there's a lot we didn't know. We just made an assumption that the more typical white young boys symptoms were what autism was. We didn't realize there's this whole range of spectrum that it's still the same thing, but it will present very different. So the same symptoms will present very differently depending on the person. So we had this very narrow perspective of what it looked like. So here I'm having my kids in the early 1990s, so it's really young. This is a very young diagnosis. My oldest, I saw problems right away. He had trouble with sounds. We couldn't travel. He wouldn't sleep. So we moved him out of his bedroom. He wouldn't sleep, literally all night up, day after day. If we went somewhere to stay when he was little, he would not sleep. And I figured pretty quickly is he couldn't stand the change of sound in the room. He needed to be in his familiar room. I also saw like extreme fussiness over what color cup I gave him. He was I raged if I gave him a blue cup when he wanted a green cup. It was just my parents looked at me and thought I was the craziest parent for giving in on him. But like, why? I mean, whatever keeps this kid happy, that I'm be happy with. He was slow to potty train, but he was hyper. I mean, this kid ran everywhere doing all sorts of stuff, and his play was really different. So, but yet I knew he could focus. I could tell he was attending. So whatever he'd get into something, he would like see it out. So it wasn't like this. I'd been around ADHD kids. It wasn't the same. I'd seen a lot of that. So I knew it wasn't ADHD, but I remember having that conversation with my pediatrician saying, something's different, but I don't think it's ADHD, it's something else. He goes like, I agree with you. Don't ever let anyone put him on ADHD meds because I don't think it's that. But he kind of like worked through it and made his way, and now he's an incredible programmer, just incredible software programmer. I have to brag for a moment. He wrote a program back in high school that was been so it's an open source program. It's been so well received that it's now been incorporated in over 1 million applications, 1 million uses. So anyway, he's just incredible thinker, the way he thinks about stuff. And then my middle kid came along and he had really severe speech issues. Started stuttering at 3, lost all speech for a period of time, needed a lot of developmental help, and, I thought that he probably was suffering from some IQ issues too. Although, I mean, he seemed really brilliant in other ways. He was doing a lot of like hitting his head against the wall, things like that. And he got assessed, ended up in a like pre-primary support, for the kindergarten, and then kind of pulled out of it. And by the way, they told me he was not didn't have any IQ issues, that actually he was a genius. So that was like, wow, okay. But then when he started speaking, I could see his IQ was phenomenal, like way outpaces all of us. And we got all the way through. He made it through school, wasn't easy, struggled with friends, got into college, and he really struggled. And that's when we took him in and had him assess. And that I'll never forget. I saw a psychologist that I knew. I knew he had a specialty in autism. I'd worked with him at the hospital, so I knew him personally. He came out to me after the interview, when this guy, my son was a 20 something, and he said, "Carrie, I knew within the first 5 minutes he's autistic." I just was like stunned. And I felt so much grief because he'd lived his whole life with no support. And none of my kids have had any support for it. So that was how I found out, was when my middle son finally got assessed. And this is after getting speech therapy and all sorts of help. Nobody had told us. And then my youngest kid had a lot of sensory problems, just tremendous sensory problems. Trying to buy clothes for him was the most miserable experience. Putting new shoes on him was awful. I mean, I'd say, which shoes felt the least bad? And then he, like, with little shaking fingers, tears streaming down his face, he'd say, "That pair." And we'd buy that pair. I mean, it was just rough. It was rough. So I got diagnosed when I was 57. I'm 61. So it's been 4 years. And I remember talking about my middle son's problems. And I was just a social worker who had worked with me before, saw me through this narcissistically abusive relationship. And she said to me, "Have you ever considered that you're autistic?" And I like didn't look like the did that. No. She goes, "No, I really think you need to reconsider that. I think you are." Like, whoa. I didn't even know what I thought. She was full of it. Got out of that appointment, went back and started researching how it presents in women, and I was blown away. It was like reading me. I mean, even down to, as a kid, I used to walk around with my hands like with my thumbs, and you know how some kids flap? I didn't flap, but I had this way of holding my hands wrong, that people would say, "You're going to break your thumbs. You got to stop walking around doing that." I would spin. There was a chair at the house. I'd spin. I'd play the same noise. I still had the playlist I have right now. I've been listening to all year. I play it on repeat. I'll play the same song over and over. I eat the same thing. Oh, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's wild. So it explained a lot when I found out, but it also explained why I got duped by that toxic person, why I didn't realize this guy had a completely double second life. I didn't believe people did that. I really didn't. I was so shocked that somebody could be that deceptive. Um, and now I know, and here's the other one weird thing about me, and I think I've heard other autistic people say the same, is that deception for me, if I'm going to tell you a lie and I know I'm telling you a lie, I'm deliberately trying to deceive you, it hurts me. It physically hurts me. I just don't do it. I can't do it very well. It's just uncomfortable. So I assumed it was uncomfortable for everybody. I didn't know that a lot of people do this on a regular part of their life, that it's just sort of how they operate in the world. They don't think anybody needs to know the truth. So they walk around lying all the time. It's like, I don't know how you do that. It's just, and I do tend to, like, believe people when they say shit. I know I shouldn't, but I kinda do. So, that's the other hard part about all of this, is that I've had to learn to view the world very, very differently, to realize that there are all I have to ask myself, what could benefit them? What might they be getting out of this? What aren't they telling me? And I've really had to learn how to, listen to my gut a lot better. I started dating someone briefly, and then I ended it just this last weekend, and, it was hard for me because I had to do a lot of reading between the lines. And what was interesting, though, is he asked me why, and I told him in a really nice way why. And he came back and he confirmed that I was right, that I had picked up all the right stuff and I was making a good decision for myself. So somebody is asking, how do you get a diagnosis with autism if you're an adult? I would look for a specialist. I think Psychology Today has a good directory. I also would look for. There's a really great site. It's for older women. You have to be born after 1975 for you to join, and that group is filled with experts. Some of them have written books in that group. That's a place where I often go and ask for names of people who know really solid assessors. But I would ask around. I would ask for people, maybe even online. I know there's groups for autistic adults online. You can ask who went to whom and Who did they see, and did they feel that they got a fair assessment? Because the hard part is, I know if I walked in and said to somebody, "I think I'm autistic, would you formally diagnose me?" Which, okay, so a social worker who was being paid for the appointment diagnosed me, but did she give me a code for it? No, I didn't get a CPT code for it or a diagnostic code for it. I didn't technically have a formal assessment. I'm a psychologist. I've taken the assessments, by the way, and I do score firmly as an autistic female, firmly. So I've taken some of the similar stuff that would say, yeah, that you would get an assessment, but I haven't actually paid for an assessment, if that makes sense. Because you have to ask yourself why you want it. Because what happens is it follows you for the rest of your life. And that means you're less likely, you may not be able to have certain jobs. And I've just heard another content creator talk about the fact that it creates a bias against you. People hear that and they make assumptions about you that may not be accurate. So, um, I would really ask yourself why you're wanting it, why you think it would be helpful. A lot of communities don't require you to have a formal diagnosis before you are invited into their groups. You can just say I'm autistic and they will accept that because it's a hard diagnosis. So yeah, I guess I would ask around. I would ask for some good names. So why 1975 for that group? For it's called Aspardames. And if you guys want, if you're autistic and you're born after 1975 and you'd like to be a member of the Aspardames, let me know and I could put vouch for you. It's on a Facebook group. I think it's just the way that they just wanted it for older women. They wanted it for late diagnosed older women. I think that's the only reason. I don't think there's anything special about 1975. I just think they just picked a number and made that the cutoff. So, and it's global. I mean, there's women that come that get join. We have like teas where you hang out online in video, and there's women who are coming in from all over the world. Australia, they're from Iceland. I mean, it's really an amazing group because they're from everywhere. Back to your question for diagnosis, is it better to have LCSW or a psychologist? I don't think it matters. I think as long as they have the ability to formally diagnose and give you the right category. Can you explain about a narcissistic family that supports everything that he does? Oh, Adrian, I was talking about there's a Facebook group for late diagnosed women with autism, and they've just asked that you be born after 1975 to join the group. That's all I was saying. There are other groups. I've found groups in my own area that have no stipulations at all other than maybe you're not exclusive. In other words, you're friendly to all, you're an ally to all sorts of people. But it's easy to find support groups if you start to look for them. Back to why do narcissist families support them? That's a great question. And I have seen that. If you think about it, the narcissist often is in some ways emotionally extorting his family or their family or her family, his or her family. They often create a situation of dependence or like you can only see the kids if they're happy with you. Or maybe there's even a financial obligation between them. They've done some favor for you, so now you're beholden to them. Usually there's something that really makes it hard for that parent to set, or their siblings or parents to set limits with them. So they don't dare rock the boat because they're going to lose whatever that benefit is that person's keeping them on a hook for. That's why that's what I saw. My ex-husband actually was supporting his mother, and he was financially supporting several of his siblings off and on. And so, who wants to stop that gravy train? Now, when I was married to him, it meant I was supporting them because it was actually my money, not his money. But they don't want to upset that. And also, it means that this person will then create so much problems for them. Just, you know, the same things that you're going through, they would do to anybody. They'll do it to their own children. They don't have any qualms of doing a smear campaign on. And so the family who sees that just knows this is a very dangerous person and ends up wanting not to tip make it go that way. They don't want to combat that. So I think that's why parents often support a toxic child even when they know the child's really difficult or damaging. I know I've had friends who've had difficult kids and they also love them. That's the truth of the matter. Is this is somebody you gave birth to. And I think a lot of parents feel some blame. Like they feel like they wonder what they did to create somebody like that. So it ends up then they feel sort of like they got skin in the game. And by shoring this person up and making them the best possible they can be without really realizing that's actually giving into the manipulation, that they see that as just how they show up for that individual. That's how they deal with their own shame, their own sense of responsibility for this very difficult situation. So I think that's why families often support toxic people. What How does a narcissist discard a kid? Well, that kind of fits into this family thing, and in narcissists in general. I mean, if we're really talking about a pathological end of narcissism, we're speaking of somebody who who really doesn't believe anybody has their best interest at heart, who really feels like they are on their own. And they see everybody from a competitive standpoint, even their children. When you have low empathy, so you're struggling to feel a warmth and connectedness to other people. And you think most relationships then are just manipulative because you're manipulating. So you assume other people are manipulating. Then they don't really feel a close tie to anybody. I think those of us who have normal amount of empathy have a hard time understanding what a disconnect that creates. I've listened to narcissists talk over the years. In fact, I caught a bit of a live from Nameless Narcissists this last week. I also am friends with Lee Hammock of Mental Healness. And, they both share, even though they're very different people, but they both shared how it's just hard to really believe people are on your side, and it even comes to their kids. It's hard to believe their kids are on them side. So then when the child does something that children do, even teenagers or young adults do, that maybe in their mind they see it as a breach of allegiance or a form of betrayal, it's not hard for them then to abandon that kid person. And they're also then always looking the for more supply, for more access, more resources. They're running from relationship to relationship to relationship. So it's just easy to leave the relationships that aren't gratifying, that aren't right at the top of their mind as giving back to them, and somehow for them to leave them behind just makes it super easy. They just don't see kids as a commitment, which is really hard. Yeah. Oh, I know. Nikki said, I really appreciate this. The ex-narc will leave their kids and go have a trauma bond with another people's kids. Yeah, they will. I mean, if that other person's kids in some ways give them some influence or makes them look good, or maybe they can take credit for that child's skills. Like they help them teach them how to kick in the football, and then that kid went out and scored, kicked a field goal. Absolutely, they will go wherever they can land that makes them look good and makes them look like they're all that. Oh, thank you so much for that, Fantastic Either. I appreciate that. I appreciate this has been helpful. Yeah, thank you. I know I've not been seeing all your comments over there. You guys are talking a lot to each other. Yeah, you know how autistic people are always stimming. So this is what I'm doing right now. I'm always having something in my hands. I'm always like either playing with my hands or playing with my knuckles or picking at my fingernails. But that's that's how I manage all my stress. I'm funneling it through playing with my fingers. So, oh, I'm glad that you are here hanging out with me on Tuesdays. I love that you guys come back here. That's why I set a time so you guys know when I'm live and you can plan your life around it if it's important to you, that say you have a question and you want to come in and ask me about it. I know I may not see all the questions because there's a lot of feedback happening here across 3 channels, but I do try to be here and hang out with you so that maybe you'll get lucky and I can see it so that we can address this together. And I'm just love hanging out with you guys in general, very much so. Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, there's a lot of deceptions. It is hard to move forward with a partner who's manipulated and used his kids by triangulating them. Absolutely, that makes it really tough when we see the outright exploitation of those that we love. It's just heartbreaking, very heartbreaking. And favoritism is common. Yeah, somebody's saying my mother-in-law shows favoritism towards her grandkids. So here's one that I was super uncomfortable with, and it was a known accepted fact in my family that I was my grandmother's favorite. I never did anything to deserve it. I know that if she had to pick me in the world as a friend, she wouldn't. Her and I really actually didn't have that much in common. We were actually quite different from each other, and she probably wouldn't have respected me as a person, believe it or not. But for whatever reason, she favored me as a grandkid, and I got all the kudos for it, and it was completely unfair. So those who fall into that position know, being the golden child in some way. And it was interesting because in my own family, I was a scapegoat, but with my grandmother, I was golden. And it's not deserved. Both positions are not deserved. You didn't do anything to be the shit scapegoat, and you certainly didn't do anything to be the golden kid either. And it was just like a fluke of things. And so it's a very uncomfortable thing. Yeah, I was a golden girl. That's funny. Yeah, it's a very uncomfortable thing, very uncomfortable. See, the old me, back to autism, would not have gotten that joke. I would not have. Okay, here's another example. So here, I have a high IQ. Maybe guys aren't surprised by that, but anyway, I love to play certain games. So I have this game that I do on the New York Times. I have this subscription. One is called Wordle, where you have to guess what the word is based on the letters, and it has to be 5 letters. I do great at it. I do very, very well at that game. There's a new one that they just put out called Connections. So they have this list of like a grid of like 20 words, and you have to figure out what 4 words go together. And it's 16 words. 4 words go together for 4 sets of words. I fail almost every single day. I fail at that. Get me into Sudoku and I can finish it probably under a half an hour. Give me connections where you're making connections between words and connections of how things are like each other. I can't do it. I miss it. Yeah, I just, I don't have it. I don't know what it is that I don't have, but and what bugs me is they don't give you the answers, so I can't learn from the answers. So I just like, sorry, you lost. I mean, I can be down to the last two lists, which means they're like obvious. There's only 8 words left, and I still will fail. I still won't get it. I don't get it. I just, but so you saying golden girl, that's cute. I understood what you meant. I made the connection. Yes, KP, I am autistic. So, hoarding and checking OCD after 22 years of narcissistic abuse, I developed it while I was in that toxic relationship and it got worse. Why hoarding and checking? Can I please give an explanation? Okay. So, off the top of my head, I'm just going to make some guesses. Why you might be hoarding and checking. Hoarding often is about loss. It's about a fear of losing control and losing something, losing life, losing someone important and precious to you. It's usually, if you listen to people who hoards life stories, you'll hear that they have suffered tremendous losses in their life. And so they're afraid to let go of anything. You see how that kind of makes sense? Checking an OCD has to do with safety. It's about thinking that if you like look at it enough times or go back to it enough times that maybe you can prevent bad things from happening. So my suspicion of why you're hoarding and checking, it has to do as an expression of how unsafe you felt in that relationship. That it felt like such a loss of control and a loss of important people because you probably got isolated in that relationship that now you want to clutch at things and hold on to things as a way to keep yourself safe. Something I may be totally off. Oh, bye-bye. I may be totally off the wall on this one. And yeah, pussy farts. Of course, we're not doctors. We're doctors with PhDs with education, but I never thought I was a physician. Actually, do you know I have had more education in psychology than psychiatrists do? I trained alongside of them. It's interesting. People like to be insulting. You're not really a doctor. You're a psychologist. That's not a doctor. The psychiatrist. Yeah, you don't think I know that? But I've had 8 to 10 years of psychology, and a psychiatrist has spent most of their life studying medicine. So I just like, yeah, you really crushed me that one. And by the way, a psychiatrist would never compete with me. We know our roles and we know our responsibilities with each other, and we know we need each other. So I just, wow, I'm really crushed by that insult. But anyway, back to the idea of hoarding and OCD. Let me know if that helps in any way, near where you're at. And maybe that's an issue for you, if that kind of resonates with you. Yeah, KP, I didn't know you didn't know. So, a narcissist like mine that refused to move out, is it all about control? Yeah, it's because they know you want them to move out. They will do the direct opposite of what you want in order just to really usurp your sense of having control and frustrate you. They will. That's why they drag the legal battle on. They may want the divorce. They may never want to see you again. They may know it's over and they have no desire to be back in that relationship, but they will drag that on forever if they know that it's going to hurt you and affect you. Here's the hard thing. The very hard thing with narcissistic abuse across the board If you end up needing to play a long game with one of them, and I really hope you don't need to, but if you have to, make sure you hide what's most important to you. Throw them off, give them red herrings, present other things as possibly important that really aren't. Make them think that you losing that clock that Aunt so and so gave you is going to be like life and death for you. And that losing the house is not that big of a deal, that you're never really attached. It was really more their house than yours. When really you wanted the house, throw them off. That's the best way to do it. You've got to mislead them so that, because they have a sense of where your biggest Achilles heels are, and they're going to go after that to make sure to hurt you. There is actually a study that's come out in neuroscience that said that narcissists get a dopamine hit. Now, dopamine hits, we get that when we do something pleasurable. That's like when you see somebody likes a comment that you posted somewhere, you get like, oh, that makes me feel good, and so you go check more often. Those types of things. They get a dopamine hit for hurting us when they hurt us. It pleasures them to hurt us. Think about what that means. So watch what you're doing, and make sure you don't telegraph where they can harm you, because they will do that very thing just to show you they can do it, just to get you. So be really, really careful about that. Yeah, if someone wants to reach out to me, I always read my emails, and my email is posted everywhere publicly. It's very easy to find. It's hello@kerrymcavoyphd.com. So if you have some issue that you would like me, now here's the problem that sometimes I don't respond. If you send me a letter that is pages long, like you're writing more than 400 words, and you're really wanting to describe this your whole life story, I don't have the bandwidth or the time to do that. And I also am not getting paid for counseling, so that's when I really don't. But if you're just looking for a direction, like you want me to point you in a direction, or maybe show you, suggest some better resources, or maybe tell you how I can personally help you with something that I have as a product or a resource, yeah, feel free to email me. But if you're looking for free therapy, and I know this is a contention point. I'll wrap it up on this. This is a hard thing. I know it's not easy to hear, but those of us who do this are doing this for a living. It's also takes a lot out of us emotionally. It's hard. Hearing these stories day in and day out is hard. You guys are in a serious oppression. You're being harmed. I hear stories that are gut wrenching, and holding space for that is tough. And yeah, I'd like compensation for that. I do a lot of this for free. I have a podcast you can listen to, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. I offer all sorts of content for free. But when it's direct on one, it takes an extra measure out of me. And so then I am looking for compensation. And I also struggle with doing it. I do it for 20 years, and I'm kind of burnt out, which is why I don't really take much consultations or coaching at this point. I'd like to prefer to do it more in group levels or do it through my club. So if you're really looking for support, I highly recommend that you jump into something, one of mine, where I do it already, like becoming a club member. I know it's $75 a month. That feels like a lot, but when you think about it, you get 4 group hours of live time with me every month. Imagine having to pay for group coaching. That would be a minimum of $200, or $50 a cents, or $50 a session. You're getting it for $75 a month, plus all this great support, plus access to my course, plus access to a lot of resources that I don't put out publicly. So if you're looking for more from me, the best way to do it is to become a club member. And then I will respond to direct messages. And I will, because you're paying me for my time. So I know that's hard to hear, and people are like, well, but I'm already financially strapped. Yeah, yeah, we all are. We all are. So, but if you want more help, that's a way to get it. Anyway, you guys, I will be back here next Tuesday. I really appreciate this wonderful dialogue we had across all of the channels here. So much great talk between us. I appreciate it. I will be back next week. I'll tell you what my Christmas schedule is going to be as we get closer, because right now I don't know what it is yet. And thank you for that hydration reminder. I do need that. I do need to take a drink. But I will be back here next week. And if you want to listen to this again, Carlita, check out YouTube. It's already, once the minute I close this down, it'll go live and it's available for replay. It's already available for replay. So at YouTube, my channel is Kerry McAvoy, PhD. The same it is everywhere. Hey, you guys, I love and appreciate you so much. I'll see you next week at 4 p.m.